Yo, what's going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle here with the Fantasy Headliners Week 16. Well, we're here. We've made it. For a majority of you, if you're watching this right now, you're probably playing for a fantasy football championship. If not, then you're probably playing for a chance to play for a fantasy football championship. Whatever it may be, it's the most important week of the season yet. So let's go ahead and dive in to my start and sit analysis for wide receivers this week. And I'm going to be 100% honest with you right now. This week, we're simplifying everything, all right? What I always tell fantasy football owners, keep it simple in the playoffs. You have guys that got you here. Ride them, okay? Don't get too crafty with your lineup. Don't overthink it. A lot of people last week, should I really play Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson? Yes, you should. I don't care how tough the matchup is. They're two top 10 wide receivers. You play them, they got you here. The same thing goes for this week. So we're not going to get too crazy with our decisions this week. We've got guys that got us here. Every once in a while, we might see, a matchup that perks our interest, or depending on how your roster shapes up, maybe you do have a couple of guys you can move around. But for the most part, we are going to stick with our studs. We are going to go with the guys that got us here, and we are going to ride them to a fantasy football championship. Before we talk about week 16, let's take a look back at week 15. And the wide receiver numbers for last week, percentage-wise, 71% at wide receiver, over 70%, just like we want every single week. And some hits. Corey Davis. A lot of people were worried about Corey Davis. Dude went off, had a huge game last week. Zach Pascal ended up being a miss. Wasn't really expecting him or Antonio Brown. I took the miss on Marvin Jones because I did tell you to start him or sit him earlier in the week, but I did say if there was no Matthew Stafford, and Matthew Stafford did end up playing. So I will take the miss on it, but just keep in mind that's a big reason why you should always watch updated information throughout the week and keep an eye on our social media accounts and everything, because Marvin Jones, I would have played him if I would have known Matthew Stafford was actually going to get on the field last week. Which that within itself is absolutely crazy. But neither here nor there. Let's move on. Let's take a look at week 16. And we're going to start not with our Thursday night matchup, but with our Christmas Day game on Friday this week. Minnesota and New Orleans, get ready for a shootout. Get ready for a high-scoring game this week. And just like last week, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, they're going to be starts for us. There's no other information I can give you to convince you to put them in your lineup. If you own them, you are going to play them. They have been starts for quite a while now, and they will continue to be, especially in a game that could be high-scoring like this one. On the flip side, for New Orleans, obviously no Michael Thomas. Lost him for the rest of the regular season. But Emmanuel Sanders, he will be a start for me. Now, here's the thing. Sanders last week went 5-4-76. And yes, Minnesota does have a little bit of trouble with the pass. But Drew Brees back last week really spread the ball around an awful lot. Now, was that because he was having trouble throwing a little bit? Was he trying to work off some of that rust? You could tell at the beginning of the game he was definitely having some issues. Looked better as the game went on, but I expect a lot of the same thing this week. A lot of spreading the ball around, a lot of hitting everybody, the best open receiver that you can find. Drew Brees, obviously one of the best in terms of going through progressions and things of that nature. So Emmanuel Sanders, I will go with the start. Not sure I'm expecting a huge performance, maybe something very close to what we saw last week with a 5-4-76 type of line. Definitely think that he could score a touchdown as well. 3 Saturday matchups this week. The first one on the docket, Tampa Bay and Detroit. And for Tampa Bay, Godwin, Evans, Brown, they're all going to be starts. Why is that? Because the Detroit secondary right now is depleted and they can't stop anybody. Over the last 4 weeks, they have allowed the second most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. So expect Godwin, Evans, and Brown, all of them to roll again this week. Well, there's only been one team that is worse right now in the secondary than what Detroit is. And it's a team that they're playing, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay right now is giving up the most fantasy points per game over the last 4 weeks, getting absolutely burnt by the deep ball. And Marvin Jones is going to be my Manscaped must start this week. Now, again, as of last week, it's all going to depend on Matthew Stafford. If Matthew Stafford plays, then 100% Marvin Jones are rolling out. My Manscaped must start this week because a big week could be incoming for him. If Stafford were to sit for some reason, then at that point, we got to take a step back, because do you really rely on Chase Daniel to get Marvin Jones the ball in your fantasy football championship? But don't forget, if you head over to manscaped.com, you can use the code word headliners, all capital letters, and get 20% off all of their great products there, plus free shipping. Manscaped.com, code word headliners, all capital letters, 20% off and free shipping. The San Francisco and Arizona game doesn't sound nearly as exciting now as maybe it did earlier in the season, but on Saturday this week, we still got a couple of targets within this game that we're obviously going to be keeping our eye on. Number one, it's going to be Brandon Aiyuk. Another 13 targets last week. When there's no Deebo Samuel, Brandon Aiyuk is getting double-digit targets. So, yeah, he is a guy that we will continue to roll out. Maybe the ceiling isn't as high as it was last week. More than likely, he'll get away from Patrick Peterson a majority of the time, but still expect him to see him every once in a while, which could limit a little bit of the upside. On the flip side for Arizona, DeAndre Hopkins, he's absolutely going to be a start every single week as usual, but Arizona's done a really good job of spreading the ball around recently. I mean, the Kyler Murray shoulder injury, not a whole lot of people are talking about it. It's not anything that's causing too many issues right now, but it's causing just enough issues that it's kind of keeping that ceiling a little bit lower for the people around him, including Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk. They are spreading the ball around a lot. Dan Arnold's even getting some looks right now. Chase Edmonds made an impact in the passing game last week. So expect DeAndre Hopkins to get that volume as usual, but the ceiling just isn't there for everybody else. Miami and Las Vegas, and this week, I'm going to be honest with you, there's not really anybody I'm keeping an eye on in this matchup. Devontae Parker, if he plays, then yes, I would be willing to take a look at him this week and put him in the lineup if he plays. If Parker is out, then I will also look at Lynn Bowden Jr. in a PPR type format. I'm not necessarily going to rely on Lynn Bowden in a half PPR or standard league. Definitely not a standard league. And if you're in a half PPR league, I will consider it this week, but you really have to kind of be on your last leg. He's going to be a decent option. Not a whole lot of ceiling for him, but he should get enough targets to at least get you maybe around 10 fantasy points, if that. He's going to be right in that area. So, again, no one really from Miami this week except Devontae Parker if he plays. And if Devontae Parker is out in PPR formats, some half PPR formats, Lynn Bowden Jr. Now, for Las Vegas this week, I would love to go with Nelson Aguilar, but we don't know what's going on with Derek Carr. Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota are kind of splitting snaps right now. Is Derek Carr going to be ready to go? Here's the thing. Championship week, I'm not going to trust it. I'm not going to trust Marcus Mariota, even though he did play well last week, to get Nelson Aguilar the ball enough for us to really trust that matchup here in week 16. So again, that's why I said at the beginning of the video, we're keeping it simple this week, all right? We're not going to overthink it. We're not going to dive too far into the what ifs. Marcus Mariota starts. Do you really trust Marcus Mariota and Nelson Aguilar in your fantasy football championship? Now, Washington could provide some issues for the Carolina wide receivers this week. For Robbie Anderson, he will be a sit for me because he's the guy that's typically going to line up on the outside, get the cornerback one coverage, and honestly, with Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore looking really good lately, Robbie Anderson just hasn't looked nearly as good. Could we get CMC back anytime soon? Who knows? But for me, Robbie Anderson this week, probably seeing the toughest matchup, will be a sit. Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore, as I mentioned, they're going to be moved around a lot more, and I like that about them, and I think that's what makes them more successful right now in terms of what they're doing in this offense. It's better to create mismatches with DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel. So I will start both of those guys, even in a tough matchup against Washington. Now, for Washington, Terry McLaurin, it's all going to be about who plays quarterback this week. Okay, what's going to happen with Dwayne Haskins? Some controversy with him there, apparently out in the strip club, no mask, whatever it may be. Does he end up playing? Is it somebody else this week? That's something that we have to keep an eye on. Terry McLaurin still saw 12 targets last week. 77 yards, nothing to scoff at. I mean, that's still a good week for him. Seven receptions, 77 yards. If you're in a PPR format, got you about 14 points. Not bad. Could be better, but still not bad. There was also a big play that was called back as well. So Terry McLaurin, again, he's going to be a start for me right now, but it's really going to depend on who plays quarterback. Let's keep an eye on that throughout the week. Can Pittsburgh get back on track against Indianapolis this week? It's going to be tough. It is going to be tough for Pittsburgh to get back in the win column with how well Indianapolis is playing right now. And for Indianapolis, I'm going to sit everybody right now because I highly expect the ball to be spread around a lot, whether it be Hines, Taylor, any of the three tight ends, Pascal, Pittman, Hilton, okay? All these guys, and plus a difficult matchup, I expect the ball to be spread around an awful lot. and I don't want to risk trying to decide who that may be this week. Hilton's the guy that's been playing the best so far, but he's also going to be the guy that gets the toughest coverage against Pittsburgh this week as well. Now for Pittsburgh, again, we're keeping it simple this week. I'm not excited about trying to play really anybody right now with how this offense looks. Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool. Right now, Johnson's the guy that's getting the most volume out of everyone. But again, he can be highly volatile because of all the drops he's had recently. Now, last week didn't seem to really bother the coaching staff, but they weren't in any position to really mess with that. They had to put their best guys on the field and go for broke as they were down against Cincinnati. Indianapolis is going to present some difficulties for him again this week. They got to get back in the win column. Expect Deontay Johnson, no matter what, to be out there for the full game. He is the safest option here this week. As always, Chase Claypool will probably have the highest upside because of that big playability. But can Roethlisberger really get the ball down the field right now? The arm's looking like it's not ready to fall off, but it's definitely not looking 100% healthy. Well, expect a ton of points in the Atlanta-Kansas City matchup this week. Calvin Ridley, 100%. As we're going with him as always, all right? Doesn't change. But Russell Gage is going to be a start for me again this week if Julio Jones is still out. Over the last 2 weeks with no Julio Jones, 10 receptions on 17 targets, 150 yards, and a touchdown. Going up against Kansas City where you're going to have to throw the ball, great floor for him this week with that type of volume. Now for Kansas City, Tyreek Hill. Yep, still going to roll with him. Still one of the best. Wide receiver 1 and 2. Him and Devontae Adams, back and forth, whoever it may be. Sammy Watkins is going to be a start for me this week. Last week, 60 yards on 4 receptions. He has been seeing a few more targets since coming back from his injury. Second in yards on the team last week. And again, a matchup where they're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. I'm looking for Sammy Watkins to offer me maybe a little bit of wide receiver 3 value this week. For Chicago this week, Allen Robinson, we're going to continue to roll him out. Okay, keeping it simple. You play Allen Robinson if you own him. Darnell Mooney was really close to being a start for me this week. He's got a touchdown the last 2 weeks. The matchup does help, but again, I don't want to get crazy here. I don't want to start guys like Darnell Mooney who could just disappear on any given week. Yeah, he's got touchdowns the last couple of weeks, but they've been running the ball really well with David Montgomery. That could continue this week. They've got Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham out there quite a bit, seeing targets. You've got Allen Robinson there. That's the alpha. Anthony Miller still in the slot. For me, it all comes down to, do I really want to risk it this week? Well, if you've got a wide receiver 3 spot open and you don't really have a whole lot of better options, I think Darnell Mooney and scoring a touchdown this week is a pretty decent bet. So that's okay to roll with. Me personally, I'm going to try to find somebody else that maybe offers a little bit more opportunity for volume. And Darnell Mooney, I don't know if that's the guy this week, especially if Chicago can get up on Jacksonville early. I mean, Jacksonville has the number 1 pick right now. Do they really want to win? We'll see. On the flip side, going for Jacksonville now, DJ Chark, we're not going to start him this week. He's been an okay option recently, but he doesn't have a touchdown, and he doesn't have a 100-yard gain since week 9, and this is a tough matchup. And again, are we going to see a whole lot of DJ Chark? What are we going to see from this offense? Is James Robinson actually going to play? So for me, I'm going to steer clear of the Jacksonville offense going up against a tough defense this week. Well, Cincinnati gets a decent matchup this week in the secondary. So T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, both of these guys are going to go back to being starts for me this week. Coming off that great game against Pittsburgh, is Cincinnati going to be able to get up for this game? That's a question that I always ask myself. Teams that are coming down from the high of a victory like that, now they got to get up for Houston. They might still be trying to get some of that energy from last week, and a lot of it could be gone. For Houston, though, Brandon Cooks and Keke Coutee, both of them are safe options for me in this matchup against Cincinnati. I'll go with Cooks and Coutee. And honestly, last week, if Ben Roethlisberger had been on, if he had looked like the Ben Roethlisberger of old, Pittsburgh may have looked a lot better. But that offense just didn't seem to function correctly. I'm going to take Deshaun Watson going up against Cincinnati this week to really put it on them, and Cooks and Coutee will be the guys. The Giants' offense has not been good, and they get a tough matchup. So we're just going to make it easy for you here, and we're going to skip on the options for the Giants wide receivers this week. For Baltimore, though, look at this team. Look at this offense coming out of nowhere. Marquise Brown, since week 12, as the wide receiver 14. Things are flowing right now really well for this Baltimore offense, and going up against the Giants, I will take Marquise Brown to potentially score a touchdown this week. I think that he could break away for at least one big play. He's going to be a risky option, maybe a wide receiver 3 for you. If you do have a little bit of a safer option out there, like for me, Sammy Watkins is probably going to be a little bit over Marquise Brown this week, just because I think he sees a little bit more opportunity for volume than what Brown does. Brown's kind of predicated on that one big touchdown, but with the way this offense is playing, it could definitely happen. Hopefully Cleveland doesn't let us down like the LA Rams last week against the New York Jets. I think Cleveland's coming to play, though. Okay, Cleveland's coming to play. They're getting a chance to break this playoff drought. They're going to bring it. They're going to put it to the Jets. So Rashard Higgins and Jarvis Landry will both be starts for me this week. I am worried about lots of running, though. For some reason, they can get up really early on the Jets. Then Landry and Higgins lose a lot of value throughout the course of the game. But I'll still roll with both of them. Probably pretty safe options in this matchup. For Higgins, I'm okay with him in the flex in like a PPR league, but I don't expect too much of a ceiling from him. I'm expecting literally right around 10 fantasy points. Now for the New York Jets, I will go with Jamison Crowder this week because he just keeps getting the targets and the volume is there for him. But for Perryman and Mims, they just haven't been consistent enough for me to rely on either one in championship week. Maybe in a normal week, I take a shot on Tim Patrick or Jerry Jeudy, but again, we're keeping it simple in championship week. I'm not trusting either of these guys. They haven't been good enough. They haven't been consistent enough, so I'm going to skip on all of them going up against the Chargers this week. And moving over to the Chargers, if Keenan Allen plays, he's had over a week to get himself right, so hopefully he is good on Sunday this week. If Keenan Allen is good, we're starting Keenan Allen. But for the rest of the options, again, maybe if you want to throw out like a Mike Williams or a Jalen Guyton, even some of you, like if Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are both out there, then Jalen Guyton's the guy that I think could still jump out. Tyron Johnson, don't really think he jumps out as much. You could possibly run with Guyton if you want to, but if Allen plays and Williams plays, the only guy I'm trusting is Keenan Allen. I expect a big week here for Jalen Hurts. But the problem trying to pick a wide receiver in Philadelphia right now is basically a coin flip. Who is it going to be? You know, Jalen Reagor and the tight ends are the ones seeing the targets right now. Do you really want to try and guess, though? And championship week, we got to keep it simple. Again, I'm saying that over and over, okay? Over and over. Do you really want to spend all week trying to guess which Philadelphia wide receiver is going to be the guy this week? I don't, so I'm not going to. I'm going to skip on all of them. Now for Dallas, definitely going to have to throw the ball this week. Amari Cooper will still be a start for me, and so will CeeDee Lamb, but Amari Cooper is going to be a lot lower in my rankings than normal. He's going to get Darius Slay. Darius Slay obviously has been absolutely burned by quite a bit of wide receivers as of lately. Cooper could do the same to him, but maybe kind of think back to what happened on Thanksgiving where Cooper had that one big play, then he had some smaller plays along the way. That's what I'm basically expecting this week, but I do expect both of these guys to get you at least 10 points. The Rams need to bounce back in a big way this week after that horrible loss, and I expect Sean McVay to get his guys up and ready to roll against Seattle. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods will both be starts for me. Robert Woods will be much higher than Kupp, and Kupp, again, is a guy that, yeah, a good game could come from anywhere at any point in time. This could be a game that it happened, so he will be a start for me. He's going to be a little bit lower in my rankings, though, so make sure you keep an eye on those rankings later on in the week. For Seattle, DK Metcalf, even though it is a tough matchup, going up against Jalen Ramsey, you do not sit DK Metcalf. And this, again, goes back to keeping it simple. Metcalf has been a guy all season long. I would much rather lose with Metcalf in my lineup than put him on the bench, have him bust a big play, and then lose because I try to get cute and play somebody over him. The good thing is for Tyler Lockett, he will be a start for me because, again, I think even though that ceiling has come down in recent weeks, the floor will still be there because Russell Wilson will probably be looking his way with DK Metcalf being locked up against Jalen Ramsey. A.J. Brown probably gets a tough assignment this week against Jair Alexander, but it doesn't matter. The dude is not a lock to score a touchdown every single week, but it sure as heck feels like it. He's one of the better bets to score a touchdown every single week. I expect him in a game that there's going to be a lot of throwing to score a touchdown. Corey Davis, though, he's going to get king. Corey Davis is a guy last week, great matchup for him, and he took advantage of it. Could happen again this week. For Green Bay, we're going to start everybody. Why? Because Tennessee, again, they have trouble stopping people right now. Passing games are really getting to their secondary. I expect Adams, obviously, wide receiver 1 for me this week, has been every week for a while now, will continue to be. Over 43 fantasy points per game the last 4 weeks to opposing wide receivers. That means Davante Adams, Allen Lazard, MVS, realistically, all 3 of them could score 10 points. Another primetime matchup, Bills Mafia. This week you get to go into New England and get a big old dub on their territory. Expect it to happen. Josh Allen, obviously. I got a lot of questions about Josh Allen this week. We're playing him, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley. Absolutely shredding it right now. Both of those guys are starts for me. John Brown, Gabriel Davis, they're going to be sits. We're not going to risk it this week. We're going to go with the 2 guys that we know are going to get the volume. And for New England, if you're starting anyone from New England in your fantasy football matchup in Week 16, you've got a lot bigger problems. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. All set. Got through Week 16 start and sit analysis. And like I said, keeping it simple this week. That's what it's all about. We don't want to overthink it. Okay, we don't want to get crazy. We don't want to tinker too much. Set the lineup with the guys who have gotten you here and get that dub. Ladies and gentlemen, appreciate you tuning into this episode of the Fantasy Headliners. Hit that like button. Leave a comment down below if you got a question about any of the wide receivers. And as always, make sure you subscribe to the Fantasy Headliners if you haven't done so yet. Appreciate you all tuning in. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.